What's up and welcome to the channel. I'm J&O. Thank you so much for clicking on this video, and today we are going to look at who Gareth Southgate should take as England goalkeeper to the World Cup 2018. This is going to be part of a series where I go over every single position in the formation I believe Gareth Southgate is going to play, which should be something similar to a 3-4-3. And in this series I'm going to look at who is doing the best in the Premier League, who the stats suggest should go, and who I also think Gareth Southgate is likely to take, and what I think the chances of a good performance for these players is going to be at the World Cup 2018. So if this is a series you're interested in and stats and football is something you love, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell, because apparently YouTube doesn't think hitting subscribe is enough to get my videos in your subscription box. So hit that bell and also hit the like if you enjoy this video. So we are starting off with the goalkeeper position, and for the first time in a long time that I can remember, we don't have a crystal clear number one. Now there has been times in the past where we have had a number one with a very capable number two, and it's almost one of those positions where we haven't had to think too hard about it. But this year the game has been changed, with the number one Joe Hart not having the best of seasons, being loaned out to West Ham, who haven't had the best of seasons themselves, and finding himself from the Euros, where he was definitely the number one goalkeeper, to now not being good enough to play in the Man City side that have just won the league. Joe Hart's position as the number one goalkeeper has officially gone. Now there's a couple of goalkeepers who have stood out this season, and it's going to be a battle for number one. But before we get into the video too much, I'm going to take out of contention Tom Heaton and Fraser Forster, because I believe they've not done enough this season or been injured, which means they'll be out of contention for that England call-up. So the four players we are looking at is Jack Butland, Jordan Pickford, Nick Pope and Joe Hart. Now there's a reason Joe Hart's in there. It's because of the experience, and it's because it seems like Gareth Southgate is likely to take him as the number 3 choice. The problem with the other three is none of them have a lot of competition experience at an international stage. Butland and Pickford do have caps. Nick Pope is very new to the scene as an England international, so there's a lot of questions about which one of those three should be number one, who should be number 2, and then if someone should take the number 3 spot and Joe Hart should be left back home. Now of course I've got my preference off of what I've seen this season, but let me know in the comments down below who you think should be the 3 goalkeepers that Gareth Southgate chooses for the World Cup as we look at the stats. On the plus side, all 3 of the keepers in contention for that number 1 and number 2 spot, if Joe Hart gets that number 3, all have played 30 games or more, so we can analyse their stats against each other and get a good image of how they've been playing this season. Jack Butland has had 32 appearances, Jordan Pickford with 35 and Nick Pope with 31. Clean sheets, Nick Pope comes out on top by 1 over Jordan Pickford. He's got 10 clean sheets to Jordan Pickford's 9. Jack Butland, in a Stoke side that have struggled this season, only has 5 clean sheets however. But on the flip side, because of that, Jack Butland has of course been playing under pressure, and he's had 134 saves to Jordan Pickford's 115 and Nick Pope on 109. With saves made, also goals conceded goes in a similar pattern, with goals conceded most by Jack Butland at 58, 54 by Jordan Pickford, and then only 28 conceded by Nick Pope. And these stats make sense for Stoke if you look at their position in the table, sitting at 19th. That is why Butland has of course faced so many shots, had to make so many saves and has conceded so many. Everton however are 8th, just behind Burnley. Everton are on 45 points to 53 points for Burnley, so it's surprising that Burnley and Everton are so similar in the table. However, stats wise, Nick Pope stands out above Jordan Pickford. Now I think one thing we can take for these stats is Burnley's defence has been better and more consistent than Stoke's and Everton's. But if we look at the percentage of shots saved by each goalkeeper, we can see again Nick Pope comes out on top at 79.7% of shots against him saved, whereas Jack Butland with 71.1% of shots saved against him, and Jordan Pickford with 68.3% of shots saved against him. Pass success rate, and now this is important because a lot of people are saying Jordan Pickford should go because his passing range and ability is better than Jack Butland and Nick Pope to play the ball out and potentially be an outlet for the outfield players to play it back to. Jordan Pickford's pass success rate is actually 44%, which is better than Nick Pope at 40%, however is worse than Jack Butland at 45%. Now of course this isn't taking into account long range passes, throws, all that kind of stuff, short passes. So the pass success rate has to be taken with a grain of salt. There could be a good reason that Jack Butland has a higher pass success rate. But a lot of news outlets are saying Jordan Pickford is most likely the number one because of his ability to play the ball with his feet. And so pass success rate is something very interesting to look at because of all that media coverage. And then finally we get to average rating, and this is how well they've been playing in the games. And Jack Butland and Jordan Pickford very similar, 6.74 for Jack Butland and Jordan Pickford at 6.70, and Nick Pope just under 7 average rating at 6.99. So I think it's safe to say, as far as actual goalkeeper performance, if we don't take into account the ability to pass a football, Nick Pope has been the best goalkeeper this season out of the three. Of course you can argue that the defence in front of him has been better, but if we compare it to what we expect England to be like in the World Cup and some of the opposition we're playing, you'd hope that in some games we would have a good enough defence to keep the opposition team at bay, and then there'll be some games where we are the weaker side potentially and the goalkeeper will have to make a lot more saves. And I think Nick Pope has been most used to that this season, as Burnley have had a good defence but then of course have had to play some of the big teams with some crazy good attacking players. Jack Butland and Jordan Pickford, however, on the other hand, have been bombarded with shots. Will they be able to keep their concentration up in games where we are dominating and they only have to make 1 or 2 saves? I think if we look back at the Euros, one of the problems with Joe Hart was his concentration. He didn't have much to do, but when he was called upon, he failed England in the Euros. And that's not a knock against Joe Hart. He was quite clearly the number one goalkeeper at one point in his career. However, now it seems like that isn't the case, with a bad performance at the Euros in his career seemingly on the decline, and potentially he could bring it back, of course. If we compare Joe Hart's stats to everyone else, it isn't anywhere close to, especially Nick Pope, but Jordan Pickford as well. With 19 appearances, he has actually had 4 clean sheets, which is close to Jack Butland. Goals conceded, he's conceded 39, which is better than Pickford and Butland. Saves he's had to make 53, but of course that correlates with the amount of appearances he's had. Shots saved, he's saved 58.2% of the shots against him, which is nowhere near the percentage of the other 3. Pass success rate is actually at 44, the same as Jordan Pickford. His average rating has been at 6.27 for the season so far, which again is worse than the other 3 candidates. So now we get on to the point where I say who I think should go, who I think Gareth Southgate will pick, and who I think should be the number 1, number 2 and number 3. Now based off of the performances, I personally think Nick Pope deserves a place on that plane. He's played incredibly well this season, and I think his experience this season is the most similar to what England can experience at the World Cup. Do I think Joe Hart should go as number 3? That is of course up to the manager, and it's a big thing of experience. Will Joe Hart's experience be beneficial to the other 2 goalkeepers at the World Cup? I personally think Gareth Southgate believes that it will be. I also think there could be benefit to it, but I am an advocate of putting the best players on the plane from the season just gone to major tournaments, so hopefully they can carry that form on. So with that being said, Nick Pope is on the plane if I was picking the side. However, I do believe Gareth Southgate may overlook Nick Pope, which I think would be unfortunate because I think he deserves, off of his performances, to go. I personally think Gareth Southgate will pick Pickford, Butland and Joe Hart, and I think Pickford will be the number 1 because of the style of football that Gareth Southgate is hoping to play with the 3-4-3 or whatever variation of that formation I believe he's going to play. If it was me picking, I would probably go Jordan Pickford, Nick Pope and Joe Hart, taking that experience on the plane as the 3rd goalkeeper. Very unlikely to play Joe Hart, and I think Nick Pope just deserves it over Jack Butland because of his performances this season. And then Jordan Pickford, if that is the style that Gareth Southgate's going for, sometimes you have to pick the players that can play the style of football you are wanting to play instead of the best informed players. So we go to a visual of the team I am picking to go to the World Cup, not Gareth Southgate's. And as you can see, I've put Pickford in goal as the number 1, with Pope as his debutant and Joe Hart as the 3rd choice goalkeeper. Now the plan for the rest of the series is for me to build this squad out, build a squad of 23, and then see how similar it is to the squad that Gareth Southgate picked, see if there's major changes that I would have made compared to him before he's even picked it. And potentially there are going to be players that I'm going to miss out on because they might have had an incredible last 3 game weeks of the season or something like that. Or potentially a player gets injured that I put into the squad. Case in point, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who looks like he's going to be out 6 months to a year, which means he is of course going to miss the World Cup. He would have very likely been in my World Cup squad. However, we can't really go with him now. The next episode will be centre-backs, as I look at the centre-backs that could be playing in that back 3 in front of Pickford. So if you want to see that video, make sure to hit that subscription and notification bell. Also, hit that like button, and thank you so much for watching the video. If you do want to support the channel in any way, make sure to share the video as well on Twitter. That would be much appreciated as I try and grow this channel up to the same kind of standards as FPL Today. I've been JNO, this has been football, and remember, it's all about the game.